Okay, is this mic working? Okay, good. Perfect. We're back.
Okay.
It's a day later. What is today? Saturday, September 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, I just got back from pickleball. I didn't put my socks on yet, actually. What have you been working on since I left the house this morning?
I had written a paper on the 32nd path of intelligence in the Tree of Life and its relationship to the root center. I think I talked about some of that yesterday.
Yep.
And I had used it in my classes this past week. So I wanted to flesh out a few more illustrations and add a little nuance of refinement to it before I released it to my classes.
Cool.
So it is now, I have one little modification I want to make, and then I will put it into a PDF and send it to my students.
Nice.
Or Cindy will post it in the classroom.
Cool. Anything else since yesterday? Because you're always buzzing. I'm having trouble keeping up with you. So.
Well, last night when we were doing Tai Chi Gong, as you know,
I saw that. Yeah.
I was given a download, which was, I think, an extremely important download in terms of the way we need to use our energy in our physical body to implement the transformation of spiritual energy. And what I was shown was the flow of energy during the sequence of the Tai Chi Gong exercises and how it is like the microcosmic orbit. So that we always have to use our mind, but not the mind that has a bad rap. We need to use the higher mind of consciousness, always with our spiritual values, applying it to the manifestation in the world. And it requires a part of consciousness always being focused and mindful of self-consciousness. And I use self-consciousness not as you are self-conscious, but self-consciousness as being aware of who you are, where you are, what you are, and what you're doing.
Okay. You lost me a bit at microcosmic orbit. You even said that last night, and I was trying to picture in my mind what that meant exactly.
Microcosmic orbit is a tantric meditation. It was actually given to me without words by Osho when I was in India and I was leaving. And I went to say goodbye to him in darshan, which is when you are as close as we are. And I said, Osho Bhagwan, I'm leaving. Any words of wisdom for me? And he said, it's interesting, I have the book and I have exactly what he said to me. He said, Asangato, that was my name, divine inconsistency.
Oh, that what that means?
Yes.
Divine inconsistency?
And he explained me exactly right. He said, many people think you're not consistent, but that if they think you're not consistent, they don't know you, because you're perfectly consistent at the core of your being. But when it comes to the outside world, you don't really care, which is true. So he said, Asangato, I'm going to give you a meditation. Do not let anybody else touch you. You have all the energy you need, and you don't need any work from outside anymore. You just need to do this meditation every day. Lay in your bed for 5 minutes as dead.
As dead.
As dead. And then bring the energy up the spine and down the front. So it's what I call the sun moon meditation. It's one of the ones I recommend in Beyond Human Design, and there should be a copy of it on my website, which I recorded.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
When Marvin and I studied with Montauk Chia many years ago, he gave us the microcosmic orbit. And the microcosmic orbit, you start bringing the energy from the crown down, and it comes down the front and up the back. So you're sending it, you start it out at the sacral center in the dantian, and then you bring it around under the groin and up the back. And as it gets to the head and begins to come down, what we were taught was you bring it forward and to the back. So you're going sort of in a cross, and you're activating the third eye as well as the satsuma. And so you're coming down the front, and then you're going around, and you circulate it over and over again. So it's basically the same meditation. And I do it every day before I fall asleep.
Interesting. I'm experimenting with breathing and meditation, and last night, kind of after our conversation, and I've done it before, but I do sort of figure eights up my spine.
Right, the double helix.
But not front to back. In my mind, I was doing it sideways. It was easier to, because I actually kind of move my body with it too, and I can feel fluid movement, like if I get it right. But I hadn't thought about front to back.
You might find it very interesting to do some of Osho's active meditations. He had a number of them. He had the dynamic where you would jump with your eyes closed up and down for 15 minutes. And then you would stand for 15 minutes. Then you would sit for 15 minutes. And then you would close your eyes silently.
I've seen that. Actually, I think it's called the Kundalini.
No, the Kundalini is shaking.
Oh, there's shaking. That's the one I saw. Okay.
And then there's a humming. And they're pretty powerful. So if when you meditate, you feel like you want to move, I would highly recommend one of those that takes the mind out of it. So you're not doing it, you're being done. Big difference.
Yeah. I have so many questions about Osho all of a sudden.
Ask me anything about Osho. I spent 6 weeks with him.
6 weeks? Yeah, so how long were you in India when you were there?
6 weeks.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was a lot longer than that. 6 weeks is still significant. I thought it was.
Well, I left my kids, I left my practice, and I disappeared,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
and
6 weeks is
in
a long
those
time.
days when we were in India, there were no cell phones, and you had to arrange a long distance call. So I remember Marvin and I met on the 14th of August. I got there on the 31st of July. And right around the time I met Marvin, I was due to call my kids. And Marvin said he had never seen me like that. I was pacing. But why was I pacing? Not because I was worried about my kids. I knew they were fine. But I was worried about Noble. Because he was alone. And interestingly enough, my client friend, Sharon, picked Noble up and took him to her house because he was so upset.
That was nice. You know, it's funny. In my mind, I thought you went there to live for a while. So it was more like you did. So
no, I went from a voice.
Yeah.
I had no interest. I hate to travel. The worst thing in my life is traveling and sleeping in somebody else's bed or using somebody else's toilet or, you know, not being in my comfort zone because I'm so disciplined and I have so many routines in my day that take care of myself.
Yeah.
So, no, I went, I had 5 suitcases with me. And then when I was there and I took sannyas, I went and had all my clothes dyed orange. And so what do you want to ask me about Osho?
Well, yeah, no, I'm actually just really interested with that whole time. Like, yeah, it's funny the conclusion my brain came to. I envisioned you living there for a year or two, so I don't know why my mind thought that. So it, like in modern day times, people go to a place called Ridhya, and that's like a place where they go and have an ayahuasca retreat, and they go and they, was it? Did you go there thinking it was a retreat to learn something? You
No,
just kind of went there. And
I had heard the name Osho from some friends of mine. I thought he was a kook. And
it wasn't called Osho at the time, right? He was
Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. I knew nothing about him. I had read nothing. I didn't care. I was way too busy. I was seeing 40 patients a week, doing groups of 30 or more people every 6 weeks for a whole weekend, Friday night to Sunday night, with maybe 10 hours between sessions. And I was traveling at that point back and forth to Chicago every 6 weeks to do a group, and sometimes bringing my group to California. Several of my people moved when I moved from Chicago to California to continue working with me. So hearing a voice that said, go to the ashram in India with Osho, with Bhagwan, go to see Bhagwan. I went, what? Why? But you're told by a voice to go. So I went. And I had no idea. I don't like to travel. I went to England for a week because I wanted to see England, and it was a good stop on the way to India. Long trip from California to India.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was getting on the plane, a client of mine came running up to the gate and said to me, here. He handed me Hammer on Your Head by Osho. I had not read anything. I hadn't heard his voice. I knew nothing about him except he had a reputation for there being some violence at the ashram. So anyhow, so I went. I went to England. I had a good time. I realized when I was in England that I was a writer. That's how I identify. Not as a psychologist, as a writer. I always did. And then I boarded the plane and went to India. And I arrived. And my friends had said to me, make sure when you arrive in Bombay that you don't give money to any beggars because they won't leave you alone, and just take a taxi directly to Pune. So I did. And I'm in a car, a little Indian car, and all they do is honk, with 3 Hindi-speaking men. And about halfway there, they stopped, got out of the car to get gas or something to eat. And I thought, oh, holy shit, they could drop me at the side of the road, get rid of my passport. Nobody would know. What am I doing? Anyhow, I arrived at Pune safely. I checked into the ashram. I signed up to take darshan. I was told my hair smelled from shampoo. And Osho, as I am, he was born the same day I was.
I remember saying, yeah.
And his sense of smell was as acute as mine. So I don't use any perfumes or anything because I can't stand the smells. So I had to go to the shopping area and get vinegar and douse myself in vinegar to stop the smell.
In vinegar?
In vinegar. And then I took darshan, August 4th, 1978. And it was an amazing experience. Looking into his eyes, there was nobody there.
Like always? Just that's his
He was
regular
an
state?
enlightened being, if ever I've met one.
Hmm.
I've seen Maharishi. I took Shaktipat from Muktananda. I've been with many other supposed gurus. Osho, there was nobody behind the veil.
So that doesn't sound like a good thing. That doesn't sound like
It
an
was
enlightened thing.
amazing. I
Yeah.
walked away from him and I walked out. I had to walk over to my hotel, and it was probably 9:30 at night or so. And I looked up, and the words were, "I'm never going to be afraid of the dark again, because in the dark is pure light." And there was no way I could sleep that night. No way in hell. That's how much energy was coursing through my body.
Just by having him in your
He
presence?
just touched me,
Hmm.
you know, and he told me to do two groups, the Leela group and Intensive Enlightenment. Leela group was a nude group. There were probably 15 of us. We slept on mats on the floor. We couldn't leave. We could go eat at the canteen, and we were required to do the Kundalini meditation every day. It was a 5-day group. Started on Sunday night. And I don't know which day it was. Maybe 2 days before the end, I got really sick, really sick. And I could not even, I just felt like throwing up. And I couldn't stand up. So everybody left to go to do the meditation, and there was no way I could go. So I just sat down and realized I was in the midst of a very major Kundalini experience. Prior to going to India, I'd had a Kundalini experience one night spontaneously, in which it felt like I was in childbirth labor, but it was going up my back. It was excruciating, so excruciating, and it lasted for 8 hours. I canceled everything the next day. I had clients scheduled, I canceled them, and there were marks like a serpent going up my back, visibly. So that was the precursor to my Indian experience, which I mean, it was like my whole body was on fire. So intense. And as the energy moved, and at some point, everybody came back into the room and they took one look at me and they saw what was happening. And I have no recollection of the people other than the leader of the group, who sat in front of me and just sat while I went through it. And when I finished, I never felt the same after that. I experienced a tingle in my body, like a buzz. At that time, it was distracting. And then I remember thinking, oh, this is the new me. I better get used to it. And I realized that it was telling me that my energies were open and merging. It was like something had integrated. And if I think about it now, it was that I opened fully to the spiritual world. Not when I had my first experience, it was more, it was a spiritual experience to redefine my mental world, because I didn't believe in reincarnation before that.
Mhm.
But I'd had past life experiences, which I'd validated, but I still didn't really know the mechanism. And then I did, because I understood you die and you wipe out your memory and then you come back.
Mhm.
So in the experience in India, it was as though now spirit was integrated into my body. And I still feel the buzz. I mean, all I have to do is say, am I balanced? And I know if I feel the buzz.
Hmm.
It's there. And it's what I see in auras. It feels like what I see.
Hmm.
But so I went through the Wheeler group and came out of it. And while I was there for the 5 days, I gave up my hotel room. And then they didn't have a hotel room for me.
Hmm.
So the manager and I had become friends. So I said, I'll give you my alarm clock when I leave if you can find me a room.
Hmm.
That's what he wanted.
You wanted your alarm clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, okay, no problem. So he put me in, he said, the only room in the whole hotel is the manager's quarters. And it's an Indian room. It's not an American room. So I said, give me what you have. And it was on the mezzanine. It was one room with a bed, a single bed, and an Indian shower that's like one thing of water.
Oh, wow. So they had different types of rooms.
Well, it was, I was staying in the American part of the hotel, but the Indians who worked there needed quarters to stay in.
Oh,
And
I
that was
see.
the mezzanine,
And that was the
and it
quarters
was
they
the
had.
Indian rooms.
Got it.
So he did me a favor, and I remember going back to my room, reading and being very, at peace. And then on Sunday, this was a Saturday night, on Sunday, I went to my lecture. And that's the first time Marvin saw me, August 13th, 1978, at the day and time that Kate, well, we met on the 14th, which is when Katie said, but he saw me on the 13th.
Hmm.
And commented something, and I looked at him like he was nuts, and I got up and walked away. And then Marvin and I met on the 14th, and he came to my room for a shower and never left.
Hmm.
And then within about a week, I went to the intensive enlightenment group, which was sitting on a hard stone floor for 17 hours a day. I mentioned that yesterday, I think.
And so, yeah.
So once Marvin and I met, the week I was in intensive enlightenment, he was in the Wheeler group. And then after we did those two groups, we just hung out together the whole time.
Hmm.
And I left the beginning of September. So I think we were together about 3 weeks before I left.
Okay. And did he arrive around the same time, or?
I think he arrived in June.
Okay.
He was there for quite a while.
Okay.
He was in a Indian hotel with no hot water except maybe a couple of hours a day. It was a dive, lots of noise, no windows. It was like a slum.
Hmm.
And I don't stay in slums.
Yeah, there's so many things there. Like it definitely makes sense to me that today as we mature, we know what we like, right? I used to like camping when I was young, and then I glamp now, which is basically the easiest. It's just the trailer shows up for you, and you don't have to do anything. Anyways, doesn't matter who. Um, so in the 70s, you who already didn't like traveling, and like the voice or a voice told you to go, and so you just went,
Yes.
even though like it was just funny to me because in today's age there'd be a brochure, there'd be like, hey, you're going to go to this place and experience these things. You went there and
When I decide to go someplace, like when we went to Israel for Noah's wedding last year, my ex-husband arranged a massive tour for all of us. And, so there was the events for the wedding, and then we had a week with nothing.
Mhm.
And the bride and the groom can't see each other for that week. So Noah went off with some friends to do his bachelor thing. And the family, Marvin and myself, and Charles and his 3 kids, and Katie, and friends of ours who were on the trip, and Larry and his kids and wife, we were all on this bus doing this massive sightseeing tour.
Mhm.
So I think it started on a Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I went along with it. And I don't walk. I don't like shoes. They hurt my feet. By the end of the second day, I had blisters on the bottom of my feet. And I thought, what the hell am I doing? This is not, I don't like museums. I retain none of the information. So once we got to, we initially were staying in Ashkelon, which is a very small town where Chevit's parents live. And once we started on the tour, we were going to stay in either Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. So once I stayed in Jerusalem at the 5-star hotel, and we upgraded to the upper class room, I didn't want to stay anywhere else. And so when we checked into Tel Aviv, I said, and people had gotten sick. Larry's wife got sick, and then one of the kids got sick, and his kids are grown, but somebody got sick. And then Joanna got sick, my friend got sick, and I felt my throat getting scratchy, and I said to Mother, I'm not going on any more things. Mm-hmm. So the last 2 days of the tour, I just stayed in my beautiful hotel and went through my photographs and prepared for my webinar, and spent time with my friend who lives in California and I don't get to see. They came to Israel for the wedding. And I had a glorious time in my hotel, my fancy hotel with room service and the Mediterranean right out the door. And at one point, she and I walked into town because we needed to get something. I think we needed money changed or something, or she needed something, or anyhow. We walked into town and got ice cream and, got to see some of the real people living. Mm-hmm. So to travel, I've never had any interest. Mm-hmm. I love where I am. I love my life. I love my home. I love my bed. I love my animals. I don't like leaving them. Mm-hmm. So it was a big, when I'm told to do something, like when I was told to study human design, I went to Taos to visit Ra. I mean, I went to when he taught the profile, when he taught crosses, when he taught centers, when he taught, I went to all of the early lectures when he was introducing information.
Mm-hmm.
And basically until he moved, either he would come to our house and stay for a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, or we would go to Taos and usually stay not more than a week.
Mm-hmm.
But we stayed in his home, and the first few times we stayed in this little room off the kitchen that just had a screen, like a curtain screen. It was a standing screen, but nevertheless, I mean, it wasn't a lot of privacy. And then later, I guess once we were really in business together, then he upgraded me to Loki's room. Marvin and me to Loki's room.
How old was Loki at the time?
6 maybe,
Okay.
5 or 6. Jiva was just born.
What was it like being in that home? Like what was the vibe when you're not talking about human design? It's just watching a family behave or people's mannerisms or.
Sarah was there, Ra's daughter.
Okay.
She had her own apartment, but she was there most days. She mostly took care of Jiva. She mostly fed Jiva.
I'm sorry, I don't know who Jiva is.
Jiva was Ra's youngest son.
Okay.
Who was born 3 months prematurely and almost died.
Okay, I think I've heard that before.
And caused him to go bankrupt, which is what. And then he broke with Zeno and Chaitanya. He did multiple times. Mm-hmm. They really, Zeno and Chaitanya, from my experience, were not generous of heart. They were not heart-centered people. And they were very formulaic. And Ra was a scoundrel. He really was a scoundrel. He was not to be trusted in terms of business. And they were, I don't know how their business was organized. I just know that when Ra and I formed a contract, he tried to double dip. And when I said, I don't do business like that, he formed Jovian and decided that I don't know what he decided at that point. But down the road, he broke with Zeno and Chaitanya after Jiva was born. And he was trying to develop some system that could earn him money. Mm. His concern was that he would die and his family would not be supported. And so his whole focus was to leave them a legacy that would support them. Very honorable mission.
I think we all want that for our kids. Yeah.
But not really the way he did it. Mm. So Marvin and I mean, in his home, I remember Loki showing me how to get to this pharmacy so I could get a new alarm clock because my alarm clock broke or I forgot it or something. Ra was gracious. He was caring for us. He was concerned about our well-being. We had fun together. He and Marvin hung out watching hockey games, and we spent a lot of time talking. He spent a lot of time talking about himself, his life, his plans. But mostly, I was focused on work and learning. And once we were in the contract in 99 was mostly when we were in his home. And I did tell Sarah, I found Ra a publisher for his book. And that's when he wrote Profiles. He needed something that would sell. So that's what he did. And then he taught it. And then he expected it to be a huge coffee table book. But it wasn't picked up. And I knew from my contact that he had not made a good impression on the publishers. And that they thought he was not someone who they could promote. So they didn't publish the book. And I knew when the book wasn't going to be published that Ra was going to be in trouble. And around the same time that it was denied, Sarah went back to Canada for the holidays. And she had a credit card from Jovian. So she got busted. She was doing business in America on a visa that was a visitor's visa.
Oh, it's funny. I thought Visa card. So, you mean like a work visa?
Yeah, she did not have a work visa.
My brain just short-circuited for a second there.
And so they deported her. And Ra didn't have the right visa either, I believe. And that's when he and Ambuja got married, because she was an American citizen. So they got married and then they left. And I expected to continue working with him at that point. And he expected that I would come speak at the first Ibiza Jovian conference. And I had plans to do that despite not wanting to do it. But my daughter got really sick and almost died. And that was in January and February of that year, and the conference was supposed to start in April. And I mean, it was a bad pregnancy that required that we have 20 pints of blood on tap because they thought she could bleed out. So, and she had a 2-year-old. Noah was just turning 2. And she arrived at our home and was there for 3 months because she couldn't leave, because she could bleed out. So it was a very traumatic fall for me. And when it was over, I now recognize how much PTSD I had from the whole thing. And there was no way I was going to leave my daughter at that point and go anywhere. And at the time, they were living in Portland. So I needed to be on call. And she had just gone through hell. And then right after that, they moved to LA. So I needed to be with my family. I couldn't be doing that stuff. And I think Ra was sort of bent out of shape about that. And hurt. He was sensitive on a personal level. We were friends, until we weren't. And I did expect him to be more supportive of expanding the work. But he did not want me in the human design community, is what it came down to. And that was my agreement with him, that I would handle the professional organization and not be involved in human design. So
you would handle the professional organization, but not be involved in human design.
He did not. He wanted them separate. He told me in no uncertain terms. He said, "You're not good at dumbing things down. You're a professional. I'm making it 4th grade level for the human design community. And you're not good at that." And I said, "Right, Ra, I'm not good at that. I don't want to do that. I can't dumb things down. They're not accurate when you dumb them down." So I attempted to do a class, and they didn't want to certify my people. And I don't do business like that. So I left. And I ended my contract with Ra because he didn't pay his bills. It was a 50-50 partnership, and he didn't pay anything. So I terminated it, and I had all the copyrights, and our contract said I owned the copyrights. So I continued developing my material with a foundation, a strong foundation that I had, knowing from the classes where Ra was being truthful and where he wasn't. And from the science, in terms of him really having no interest in the output that I got. Or to even, I remember walking down from my computer room downstairs to the kitchen where I was sitting and putting my output on the table and saying, wow, look at this. Where are the tone spaces and colors? They don't track. What should I do? He didn't have an answer because that was, he kept saying, go here, go here, go here, go here. I went there, I went there, I went there, I went. Get to tones and bases, and it's not there. And there are things in the output that are significant that I was not qualified to interpret. And don't know who would be.
Like some of it hasn't been interpreted yet.
Oh, none of it.
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, I interpreted what showed up, but there are rotational factor analyses that have components that hang together within the body graph that need to be understood. And I believe that they're physiological. But Ra had no interest in looking to see if he could separate out amino acids and gates and lines, or, he could have looked at it if he had the knowledge. My guess is he didn't have the knowledge, and he didn't know what to do with it. And the things he told me were not accurate. I don't use, like tone spaces and colors. And I confirmed that it wasn't accurate in the statistical research. Now, I know a lot of people have bought the story. You have bought some of it. Other people bought some of it.
Parts of it experimented on my own.
Yeah. And, there are things that may hit some people as resonating and other people not. But from a statistical, scientific standpoint, it's not valid. So I don't use it.
No, fair enough. So, and we've talked about profile often as being like it's a theme or a great story. It's interesting to hear it referred to as a coffee book today, because that, it does. I could see why he would have thought it could have done well if he hadn't been difficult with the publisher, for example, right? Because it is something that resonates with a lot of people when I talk to them. My experience has been you start talking to these themes and it
Yeah, but
reaches them.
any of those profiles that you would say to somebody would probably fit anyone if they wanted it to.
Quite possibly, and that's kind of what I've been learning as I go.
I mean, I'm a 3-5.
Me too.
But I'm a researcher. That's a first line, according to him. And you can't, I'm not so much a trial and error person as I am a data person. So you really, if you're going to use profile, you really need to use all the profiles, and you need to see what they really are showing. But the juxtaposition crosses in the hexagram, they're artifacts. So you can't give meaning to a number. which is why I use the keywords, because the profile is based on the keywords.
Mhm.
And the keywords are based on the line. So if you take and use those, which have interpretive meaning based on what the hexagrams are showing, that shows process that I use. And it really opens psychological doors for people in terms of how they function.
Well, I mean, it's been helpful for me for sure, because, almost 3 years, I thought I was a 3-5, and it resonated. It let me feel like I wasn't crazy or broken. Um, but the more I explore it, and look at it with a different lens, and yeah, it's starting to click for me for sure. But um, my question around that, because I was talking about it makes a good coffee book. At the time, you had the stats in front of you, even then, right? So was that an exchange, like, because statistically, the 3-5 or the profile didn't really have meaning. So was that a conversation that you had at the time, or did that realization come later? Or
Which for me?
yeah, with Ra at
No,
the time.
I saw Ra create it
Hmm.
out of thin air. And, Ra was a smart man and he had good stories. And he looked at things, and he initially talked about profile in May of 1997 or 8. May of, Holly died in 1999. It must have been, no, I didn't go to Taos. I didn't go to Taos in 99 because of what Rod did with my daughter in 98 and with me. So between 98 and 99, I didn't have contact with him. And then in 99, so I guess it was in 98, trying to think how, because we didn't stay in his house until after we were partners. That was in June of 99, we legalized it. So he must have come up with profile I know Ra came with me. I'm trying to think if we, maybe we did stay in his house. I don't know. I think it was, see, I took the private class with Zeno in March of 96. Then I went in October of 96 and took the advanced class. Then in May, I went of 97. I went and took the profile class. And that was right after I introduced Ra to my client who had publishing connections. She was an agent, and I put him in touch with it. So then there was a break when I didn't communicate with him. And then, because he came to visit in the fall of 98, the fall of 97. And then in February of 98 was the second trip to our house. And that's when I was done with him because of what he pulled and Zeno pulled. And I didn't give him any clients. I didn't have anything to do with him. And he didn't honor his contract with me and with my daughter to charge. He always charged half price for children's readings, and he charged my daughter full fee for my grandson's reading. And the agreement was we didn't charge each other because we were friends. We were exchanging, and he was staying at my home, and we were filling his practice with cash patients, like 40 people a week. So in 98, I cut with him. Then he called in 99. So between 98 and 99, he was writing and coming up with profile and fleshing out the content of it. Prior to that, in May of 97, which is when I went up to him, and because we had a sick cat, so I went for the day of the profile course, and then I went right back home. And so I said to him, Ra, you're welcome to come visit. We can fill your schedule with clients. We have lots of clients, and our practices are full, and we tell somebody to do a reading, and they're going to do it. So he was writing the book, and then he taught the first profile class in, I want to say 99, right after we formed our partnership. And in 99, Marvin and I went back and forth and stayed in his home many times. And he stayed in our home many times. And we were in constant touch. Like, we talked every day. And we worked on materials together. And I was doing the research pretty extensively.
Yeah. Kind of in the same line of questioning. Circuitry didn't hold up, right?
Right.
I'm pretty sure Richard Rudd worked with Ra to produce a book on circuitry, and then they split too. Did you ever meet Richard?
I did
were you
meet
ever part of
Richard
this
in the
conversation?
first Dream Rave class. When we went to Sedona to teach the Dream Rave, Richard Rudd came. So did Ilse Sendler. And there were about 100 people in the audience in a hotel in Sedona. My recollection, I'm going to publish the book the way I published it, but my recollection is that I started the class, the seminar, teaching sleep architecture, which Rod didn't know about. And then he got up and taught the keynotes, and then I got up and taught the cases with him. The two of us talked about cases, and we used the case of a manifesting generator, a case of a projector, and a case of a reflector. Very interesting. The case of the reflector was a good friend of ours who happened to have founded McKinsey and Company, which is one of the top consulting firms in the world. And you would not think a reflector would have started and founded a company of that nature. And if you look at his multidimensional chart, maybe when I publish the book, I'll print the multidimensional charts at the end as an appendix. It would be fun.
That person wasn't a reflector, though, in the multidimensional?
Oh.
Yeah, of course.
So, the history with Ra is an interesting history because I loved the man despite him being a scoundrel and despite some of the shit he pulled. That was not nice and that was not ethical with us. But it came out of his insecurity and it came out of him being a short, small man who didn't feel good with how he looked, despite him not owning that. And he was an emotional ego manifester, if you look at the whole picture. So
Do you want to? Should we go for Nami's question, and then we have a question
Sure.
from the chat. I can either go dig up the question. You remember the gist of it, right? Which was, what is someone's aura actually? I'm gonna.
What do I see when I'm looking at auras in terms of the multidimensional perspective? Do I see the auras as each world, or do I see an integrated whole? It adds an interesting slant, because I haven't thought about that before. But when I'm looking at somebody's aura from a clinical perspective, I can tell you the timing of places in their body where things got stuck. Especially,
like actually, like a year kind of.
Well, it came about because when I first began to experience all of my psychic abilities, I remember sitting with a client, my Chicago office, that's how long ago it was. And she was telling me an experience that happened with her grandmother. And I said, and she's telling me an experience, and I said, I think that was with your grandmother when you were 5. And she went, how did you know that? Somebody else, I looked at her and I said, who took care of you when you were a baby, the first 6 months of your life? She said, I don't know. I said, go ask your mother. So she did. And her mother said, nobody took care of you other than me. About 3-4 months later, she comes in, red in the face, with a photograph. She said, I was looking through a photo album and I found this photograph. And I said to my mother, who's that person? She said, she took care of you for the first 6 months of your life. I went, oh. So it took me quite a bit of time to learn what it was I was seeing and how to interpret it. And it took about 5 years for me to turn it on and off.
So for you worked at, or
I worked
tweak?
I had teachers. I worked extremely hard because to see everything about everybody, present, past, and future, I don't want to do that. It's intrusive, it's unethical, and I didn't know how to turn it off. So I learned how to say, okay, look, or okay, none of your damn business. So when I look at somebody's aura, I see an integrated whole. Now, I can also ask for the pieces of it, which I don't usually do. So each energetic field has its own frequency. And I can say, and I've said, and you've probably heard me say this, that the 5818, 4816 is a channel of frequency. Now, I also have the 57, and I have the 15.5. So I don't know what's unique to me versus what is everybody's skill. But I know that everybody sees auras. That goes without saying. I know that.
Sorry, say that last part again. Everyone sees
auras.
Okay.
We have it conditioned out.
Sure. Yeah.
But we start out seeing energy, feeling energy, hearing energy. And the gift that I have in working with people is that when I'm listening to them tell me their story, I can hear where it resonates with soul and where it doesn't. So if the voice frequency doesn't match the 5818 frequency, then they're not telling themselves the truth. And I can feel that. I can hear it. And I can say, I can ask the right question to get them back on track. What that tells me in answer to Nama's question is that, yes, each energy field has its own resonant frequency. And when they come together, what I'm seeing is almost like, I want to say a spider web, but it's a 3D spider web. So when I'm looking at somebody, I can look at colors, but there's also a field that's colorless that I see, that has, it's just the energy moving. So when I'm looking at something, I don't have a mind. I just ask, and then I'm told.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know why I thought that if you referred to seeing aura, you would see a color, but you don't. You see.
Sometimes I do, if I look.
Sure, but like there's more of an awareness. And to Name's question, like when you see someone, do you see their type then, or do you see their energy and it gives you clues to type?
I never think about people in terms of labels. Never, ever, ever.
Well, let's go down that topic for sure, because earlier before we started, or maybe you said it during, you put human design, you didn't put it down, you put it aside, because I want to make sure I'm using the right words. You put it aside for 20 years, and so you're sort of back in the fold. And it's
no, I never left the fold. I left the incomplete system that I tested that was an incomplete picture of who a person is. And you have to remember that I'm a clinician and I'm licensed. And most of my work was not doing readings. Most of my work was healing people who were struggling.
Yeah, it was a tool in your arsenal, not.
Right. And it was never a place where I made my most income, because I never marketed it that way. And I still don't intend to market it that way. My work is the Four Worlds, which is a psychologically sound system based on the Tree of Life. And I'm also an astrologer. So I can't look at a human design chart without looking at the astrology of the prenatal and the postnatal, because it would be an incomplete picture. That's why I had Charles put astrology signs into my Noble Energy Map program. So it's not that I don't respect human design. I respect it as one piece of a system, and a critical piece of a system, because what Ra brought to us was the body graph in exact measurement to the sacred geometry. When you look at that body graph and you recognize its relationship to the Tree of Life, the amount of information coded into it puts human design to shame, because it is including numerology, it's including alchemy, sound and color, tarot cards, symbolism, Hebrew letters, and what they mean. So if we take what Ross said, which is human design is a synthesis, let's open our minds to that synthesis and see scientifically and clinically what works and what doesn't work. If we were to find and do a study clinically that said the definitions that Ra came up with about profile actually are reliable as in a study. I'd have no problem using them.
Mhm.
But yes, they're reliable to show you a distribution in the population that mirrors the structure of the hexagrams. But can we assign meaning to that?
Mhm.
And is it fair to say that if just because you're on a juxtaposition cross and that occurs less frequency, that you are a left angle? I mean, that doesn't have a good connotation.
Mhm.
And, you know, I come out of a field where when somebody was given a psychological label, as innocuous it might be, like anxiety or depression, or I would sometimes use adjustment disorder because it was superficial. What does that say to the person about themselves?
Mhm.
And do we want to do that to people?
So many interesting things there. Because the tree of life's been around a long time, right? Long before
What?
the tree of life and
Ancient times, way before Judaism.
right.
And I didn't, you know, it's quoted in the literature as Jewish mysticism.
Mhm.
But when you do a little more digging, it dates back to prehistoric times with the tarot images on mosaics and pottery and murals and the imagery of four worlds dates back to ancient times. The imagery from tarot, the numerology. So we need to incorporate that.
Mhm. We seem to be relearning things and rediscovering things. And so there's a bunch of places I'd like to go with this, but one was I, I, I don't think you were aware of it until I mentioned it on Friday or Saturday, but there was apparently a fella that was about 12 miles away from Ra at the same time Ra was getting the download.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a video of the guy describing what happened. So I'll try to paraphrase it, but it was this fellow was getting the transmission at the same time, and eventually ran out to the beach and yelled stop, and it stopped. And so he basically had received everything but the I Ching. I guess he wrote it down, and then the story was like 12 years later. He saw the body graph, like the human design body graph, and was like, "I know what that is." He went racing downstairs to show someone like I had got the same thing, but he didn't get the whole download. I guess my question is, and or even if you know if Rob mentioned it, or like, did he get the complete transmission, or did he just like after what was it 8 days, 7 days, like enough was enough, and he stopped? Could he have received more, and or it's a very open question, but I just wonder, like, if
He didn't say, and he, I believe, I have no evidence, but I believe that when Ra told Marvin and me that the voice, everything the voice told him, I think he was sincere. He did not want me hearing him tell the story. And I believe because he modified it. Because when he sat with us, he told us the story.
mm-hmm.
But then why didn't he want me there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm his business partner. We talk about everything. We talk every day. And he withholds information that was what he called the gray material.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that story change 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and I think I've kind of mentioned this before. I'm very curious to hear the tapes that you have with you and Marvin talking to Rob, because seems to me it would be the most accurate delivery of the content, because he knew he couldn't bullshit you and him. So it
he
seems
tried.
Right? Yeah, but he wouldn't have been able to get very far.
No,
right?
but you see, when he said things that were erroneous, and I said, this needs to be explored, he would dismiss it.
Mhm.
So Ra thought
But there's value in people hearing that too.
well, I don't, for one thing, everything was recorded on MP3s, I think, little discs. Tom Pfeiffer liked these little tiny discs that are not easy to
Like little cassette tapes?
What?
They're little cassette tapes?
No, they're not cassettes. They're little
Oh,
mini discs.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah, timing wise, that's probably about right.
And I have transcripts of everything.
Mhm.
And those transcripts are what are in the book.
Mhm.
And I think they're in, how did we do it? Marianne Winokur transcribed everything. And at the time she called herself Patty Pata. She was a sannyasin.
Patty Pata?
Uh-huh.
Was that the name given to her?
By
Or
Osho.
That was? Okay. What did that name mean? Do you remember?
I'm trying to think. I have all of the classes we did. I have all the transcripts. Oh, you know what? I probably have a set of the discs upstairs. I didn't throw any of the raw stuff away. I mean, I had hundreds of copies of the books, and I threw most of those away. I threw duplicates away. But I kept original. I'm a scientist. I keep original source material. So probably somewhere up where you're staying, but they're not out. They're, I think I know where they are, but I haven't listened to them. I don't intend to listen to them. There were very erroneous things medically that he said, and he wanted Marvin to correct it. When I edited not the biology book, Ra got very angry at me when I published the biology book. And that was an example of Ra being Ra. Whenever I wanted to initiate anything, he would stop me. And he would give me things and tell me that we would publish it. And then he really didn't want to. So I got tired of waiting at one point, and I just published the book. And he was not happy that I did that. But it was a mammalian design book that I published, which I don't even remember what's in it. I would say, if we're talking about his medical downloads, they were not accurate. Many of the things, all of the things he said about that the voice told him about diseases with gaits and lines did not hold up scientifically. Like if you have an undefined or defined heart center, if you have an undefined or defined solar plexus to the heart center. Now, that said, there does seem to something related between digestion and the 4037, but statistically, it is not related to digestive issues specifically. So I don't think the circuitry holds the way Ra said it holds. There were no factors that could be seen in common for those channels. So I read it as a flow of energy, not as a circuit.
So on those tapes, he wasn't trying to sell you a story. He was telling you what was channeled at the time, right?
Yes.
He was trying to stay specific to that. So at that point, he wouldn't have been talking about circuitry or profile. He was just saying
nothing. He didn't have those at that point.
Yeah. See, to me, that's fascinating because he's not gonna be trying to bullshit you. So in modern YouTube land, there's these things called reaction videos. So like it'll be like piano teacher or a drummer reacts to famous drummer playing a part and they've never heard it before, and so they just basically watch it and then stop it and comment and watch a bit more and stop it. I think that'd be fascinating to do with that content. At the same time, I imagine it's hours or days worth of content. Like it's a ton, weeks, like 8 hours a day, kind of like
at least 2 weeks, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Holy cow! Okay, so maybe not a reaction video, but so and just for like those of you watching, like the room I'm staying in is like right there. No, I guess over there, and full of Osho books, young books. I think I spotted 2 didgeridoos. There's just there's just so many things in there. It's amazing. So, but yeah, I guess somewhere in there is these tapes and this content that a lot of people would love to hear, I think. So I think there's some value.
I don't have permission to do that.
Okay.
I mean, I do from the stand. Well, out of respect to Ra, I don't think he would necessarily want me to share those because it would undermine his credibility. And I'm not into trying to destroy his work in any way. He brought us a very valuable piece of work, and I'm very grateful. And I'm grateful that he trusted Marvin and me as he did. And he gave me the task of proving scientifically what this system is. And what I have proven, forget about the nuances of interpretation, but what I've proved, which is profound, is that when you expand the calculation astrologically, you not only end up with a very valid and scientifically based personality theory that has the potential to change the way we look at consciousness, and that the body map is a confirmation of the developmental sequences, the astrological reliability, the psychological reliability, and the correlation that these 4 worlds have to the tree of life and to the 4 worlds in the tree of life, which Ra knew was part of the synthesis, but did not have the knowledge to explore. So it's very interesting that from 1992.
Oh, hey, Mac. Hi, buddy. Sorry, it's in 1992, yeah.
From 1992 until I'd say 2016, I was involved studying the Tree of Life every day, every single day.
How do you even study it? Like what does that look like?
I took the course from the builders of the Adytum, BOTA.org. It's a 20-year, 15-year correspondence course where you get a lesson a week that you read and you study. And so every day, every night, every evening after dinner, I would go up to my room and read for an hour and study for an hour on the Tree of Life.
Wow.
And you take exams along the way. And so I did all of the exams and graduated as an adept on the Tree of Life.
An adept. Cool.
I think that's the term. I don't even remember. But I mean, they sent me a certificate and the whole thing, and a special Tree of Life that you don't show anybody. Which reminds me, where do I have? Oh, I know where it is. I think I know. I don't know where it is. Huh. had it framed, and I'm wondering where it may be one of the things that got lost in our move. When we moved, we lost 100 boxes.
Sorry, you lost 100 boxes?
Yeah, the movers lost 100 boxes.
Oof. Wow, that's a lot of data.
It's a lot of data, fortunately. But I think, I mean, I haven't seen that piece of art, so I suppose it's lost. I'd get another one.
I mean, that's a theme that seems to be coming up. I follow a lot of people online, and just like the amount of data and knowledge that has been destroyed, often purposely. And so it's just kind of coming back and being channeled, downloaded, whatever.
Well,
as long as
the
it gets
four
here.
worlds, the tree of life is very clear. And in the class this past week, I was very strong in encouraging people to recognize that the 32nd path of intelligence is telling us to live in spirit and live our life in the world through spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been told just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And the human design system reinforces the opposite. And my job is to tell the truth. So regardless of the consequences, I'm telling the truth, because October of 2022, God said to me, you have the four worlds, you know what it is, you need to teach it. So I think we should stop because we need to know whether we're going out to dinner.
Okay, I'm getting hungry too. I have more questions if you want to pick it up again tomorrow, though.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm always ready.
All right. I got to do that thing where I hit that button and we say goodbye.
We say goodbye.